Nobody passes this course on the first try, especially not someone like you. Those words landed like a challenge written into the air itself, sharp and unshakable. The instructor's voice carried the weight of years, the authority of a man who had seen countless soldiers stumble before the finish line. But Staff Sergeant Kira Steedman wasn't one of those soldiers. She was 29 years old, standing on the edge of the Army's most unforgiving marksmanship qualification, and about to attempt something that had never been done before, completing it blindfolded using only a laser engagement system. Kira had the kind of stillness that made people uncomfortable. She stood 5'7", lean and deliberate, every movement controlled like a metronome. Her hands never trembled, and her eyes, calm, unblinking, assessing, missed nothing. She had served 11 years as a combat medic, a 68W, but her reputation didn't come from treating wounds or saving lives under fire. It came from what she could do with a rifle. She could outshoot nearly anyone, and she had proven it in 3 deployments across Iraq and Afghanistan. Now she was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, deep in the heart of red clay country, enrolled in the Army's Advanced Marksmanship Instructor course, a brutal 3-week crucible meant to forge elite shooters into teachers for the special operations community. The attrition rate was notorious. Most never made it to the end. But Kira wasn't most people. The range was surrounded by tall Georgia pines, the air thick with gun oil and dust. Every shot fired here was a test of precision and nerve. Kira had grown up 1,000 miles away on a cattle ranch in western Wyoming, where discipline was as much a part of life as sunrise. Her grandfather, a Korean War veteran and competitive marksman, had taught her everything he knew. To him, shooting wasn't a skill. It was a language, a meditation, a code of focus and self-control. By the time she was 8, she could strip and reassemble a rifle blindfolded. At 14, she could hit a 6-inch target at 300 yards using only iron sights. Her grandfather had passed away when she was 17, leaving her not only his rifle collection but a legacy she had sworn to protect. When she enlisted at 18, she chose to become a medic because she wanted to save lives. But fate had other plans. On her first deployment to Iraq, her uncanny precision behind a rifle didn't go unnoticed. She quickly became the unofficial designated marksman, the medic who could make a headshot at distance. Her second deployment took her through the Army sniper course at Fort Benning. She graduated top of her class. When she heard about the Advanced Marksmanship Instructor course, she volunteered without hesitation. It was the final mountain to climb. The mission briefing on day 3 was held in a plywood classroom that smelled like coffee and gun solvent. The course was run by Chief Warrant Officer 3 Aldrich, a man who looked carved out of oak and sunburn. His voice was gravel and iron. 22 years of teaching marksmanship had made him as relentless as the course itself. He made it clear, this was about results. Anyone who didn't meet the standard would be dropped. No second chances. Kira was one of only 3 women in a class of 24. On the 3rd day, during a stress shoot under a ticking clock, she finished faster than everyone else, every round landing inside the kill zone. Aldrich inspected the line of targets, pausing at hers. His expression was unreadable. Acceptable, he said, his tone flat. Speed's nothing without consistency. Later that afternoon, in a classroom session on ballistics, Aldrich asked her a question about wind drift over distance. She didn't hesitate, reciting the formula, explaining bullet trajectory, atmospheric variables, and angular deviation. Aldrich gave a slow nod, not quite approval, but something close. Knowing it on paper is one thing, he told the class. Doing it under pressure, that's where you prove you belong, the others noticed. Some of the older NCOs, especially Staff Sergeant Rena, didn't bother to hide their resentment. Rena was infantry 10 years in, proud of it. During breaks, he'd make sure his comments carried far enough for her to hear. Medics don't belong in instructor courses, he'd say, probably lowering the standards again. Kira ignored him. She always did. Words didn't change outcomes. Shots did. Each evening, she stayed late in the barracks, field stripping her rifle, running dry fire drills, mentally rehearsing every stage of the course. Her grandfather's voice was always there in her head. Shooting is 90% mental. The moment you doubt, you lose. The final qualification arrived on the last day. It was the monster everyone feared, multiple stages testing every skill the students had learned. Long-range precision at 600 meters with the M110 sniper system. rapid transitions at close range with the M4, stress firing under exhaustion, and night shoots using infrared optics. Every movement had to be perfect. One error could erase weeks of work. Kira rose before dawn, checked her rifle, adjusted her optics, and walked onto the range with the same calm she'd carried into firefights overseas. The air was cold and still. At 0700 hours, the qualification began. She flowed from stage to stage, adjusting for wind, reading terrain, controlling her breath. Her shots landed like punctuation marks in the quiet. When the final tone sounded, her score was the highest in the class. That afternoon, Aldrich assembled the students. 17 had passed. 7, including Raina, had failed. Then he looked at Kira. "You did well," he said evenly. "But let's see if it was skill or luck." He announced a demonstration. Kira would repeat a segment of the qualification, but this time blindfolded, using a laser engagement system. The class fell silent. Even the birds seemed to stop. Kira knew exactly what this was. A test, a trap, a chance for Aldrich to see if she'd flinch. She didn't, she simply nodded. "I'll do it." The range officers cleared the drill under strict safety rules. The targets would register hits electronically. Aldrich himself would act as her spotter, calling out targets but offering no corrections. One miss and it was over. Kira tied the blindfold tight, sealing away the light. The world became texture and sound, the smell of gun oil, the distant rustle of pine needles, the faint metallic click of Aldrich's stopwatch. Her hands found her M4, fingers sliding over the familiar contours. Her pulse slowed. Aldrich called the first target. 100 meters, standing silhouette. She raised the rifle, the stock firm against her shoulder. She exhaled halfway and squeezed. Hit, next. 150, kneeling. She dropped smoothly. Breath steady, fired, hit, 200. Prone. The gravel pressed into her elbows as she adjusted for the faint crosswind. Hit. 250. Standing unsupported, the hardest shot. She rose, balancing perfectly, trusting her muscle memory. Hit. 300 meters. Prone. Magazine change mid-drill. Kira dropped flat. Fired once, heard the tone confirm contact. Reloaded by feel and fired again. Hit. Silence followed. Then a low murmur rippled through the line. Kira pulled off the blindfold, blinking into the sunlight. Every face was turned toward her, some in disbelief, others in awe. Rena's jaw hung open. Aldrich checked the data, then looked up slowly. "What you just witnessed," he said to the class, "is what happens when discipline meets mastery. Remember this. If you want to be instructors worth a damn, train like she does." He turned back to Kira. "You passed." 2 days later, at the graduation ceremony, Kira received her certification from the course commander. The colonel shook her hand and told her she'd set a new record for the program. Afterward, Aldrich pulled her aside. "I was wrong about you," he said quietly. "In 20 years, I've never seen someone with your control." Rena passed his retest the following week. Before leaving, he approached Kira. "Watching you shoot," he admitted, "changed how I think about this job." Kira went back to Fort Benning, this time as an instructor. Within months, word of her skills spread through the Army. Units from across the country requested her by name. Yet in her locker, beneath the gear and certificates, she kept her grandfather's old rifle. Some nights, when the base was quiet, she'd take it out, clean it carefully, and remember his words, "Excellence isn't a moment. It's a habit, earned one shot at a time."